So I wanted to approach this video from a different perspective this time. This was a requested build for a customer, and I wanted to show you what are the costs of each component that goes into it. I must admit this was probably my most expensive project so far, but still the final number might surprise you, so stay tuned. The first material I bought were these weird and ugly looking roots, and that's exactly what I wanted. It's hard to tell what wood species it is, and I really just wanted something that looks wild and is dry, so I got this 800 IQ idea to go to a local pet shop and bought these driftwood pieces which you put as a decoration if you have a spider or snake vivarium. It was overall difficult to work with because in the core there was this dark portion which was one of the hardest woods I've ever worked with. It has definitely made many of my tools dull, and on the other hand, the outer, lighter part of the root was much softer, in some cases even too soft, so I needed to stabilize it with epoxy. The plan was to mill all the driftwood to flat pieces as you see, and this will eventually make the top of the guitar's body and headstock. The only option to achieve that was to use my router sled table. It was an extremely messy process, by the way. I took a picture of the driftwood pieces and organized them in Photoshop so I can predict the final placement and use the smallest amount of epoxy as possible. I wanted this to be mostly driftwood, and the role of the epoxy was to just connect the pieces physically and optically. My tip for stabilizing small wood pieces like this with epoxy is to secure them with double-sided tape so you avoid the nerve-wracking wood floating. Also make sure that your mold is sealed perfectly. Epoxy is generally expensive, so you don't want any leaks. I didn't want to talk much about the epoxy pouring because there's already tons of epoxy woodworking content on YouTube, you know. So what I did after it cured was that I made it flat again on my router sled and got it to its final thickness of 10mm. Then I sketched the shape of the guitar's body, and as you will see later, the shape is not in its final form yet because I'm planning to cut the upper horn a bit to make it more Telecaster-ish. The next step was to make a neck blank, and I picked curly maple and Macassar ebony to make a laminated neck which will go through the body. Now I should say that the price which I bought this lumber for will eventually differ from the final cost because I didn't use all of it. The curly maple was for around $40 and ebony blank was for $100, but as I explained, the part of the maple I eventually used for this build was $34 and $43 for the ebony. As you can see, it will be a 7-piece neck. Now what I had to do was to glue all the strips together, and here I slipped a bit, and I'm sure my friend will take this exact second in the comment section to tell me how silly person I am. How could I ever build a guitar? And so on. Then I used all my clamping equipment and squared the blank the next day. I routed channels for the carbon reinforcement rods, which I would recommend everyone to put in when using curly maple, because the grain direction of curly maple is, well, curly. And the carbon rods should stabilize the neck to be more resilient against twisting and warping during humidity changes. And of course I put in the truss rod, which will have its adjustment access at the headstock. Fretboard will be Macassar ebony as well, so I cut a small flat piece from what was left from the ebony blank, and always remember that cutting such hard wood requires patience. The only fret marker on the top of the fretboard will be this Roman number 13, which will be in the octave, that's the 12th fret. And now you are probably saying, but it's the 12th fret, there should be Roman 12, not 13. The 13 should be on the 13th fret, to which I say,
I know that, Fogel! I know that!
It's time to talk about the inspiration for this build. The customer wanted to have Roman 13 on the 12th fret position, because 13 symbolizes death, and is the number of death tarot card. And because I still don't own a CNC machine, I had to route the inlay by hand with Dremel and file the aluminum Roman numbers. I tried my best to make it look as precise as I could, and then proceeded to introduce a 14-inch radius to the fretboard with my profile sanding beam, which I made a year ago. My favorite way to do the fret slots is using Dremel with thin router bed and straight guiding edge. That's the only way to make slots with frets with invisible tanks without CNC or fretboard binding. You just need to measure all the distances carefully, especially when doing multi-scale fretboard like this. And once I was done with all my slots, I could glue the fretboard to the neck. One person reached me on my Instagram to ask me what tools are the #1 priority when it comes to building guitars, in case he would want to start his own guitar woodshop. It's a plunging rounder, for sure. You can see me using that for almost all the duration of my videos. Not only you can route channels and cavities with that, but you can also use it as a planer, jointer, thicknesser, and can be installed in variety of jigs and so on. This was an extremely sketchy way to do the headstock angle. Please don't do it like this if you are confident with your router. The next important power tool would be bandsaw, in my opinion, and of course drill and etc. Which reminds me to talk about the sponsors of today's video, which is no one or nothing yet. But it would be really cool, right, to get sponsored by Makita or Bosch or something like that. So, I also made a thin veneer from the Driftwood plate and I'm about to glue that to the headstock with gluing epoxy. This was very slippery, so I put 2 screws to the corners, which will be cut anyways. I only use basic rasp for the shaping of my necks. It's a slow process, especially when working with hard woods like this, but it also gives me time to think and not mess up anything. This is another one of my 800 IQ ideas and a great benefit of neck-through guitars. You can route a channel to the side of the neck blank in the zone where the pickups will sit, and the cable passage is done. I've picked ashwood for the guitar's body. That's just a classic. Ashwood is nothing expensive in my country. I bought it as a 13 feet slab, which is around 4 meters in width like this, and it was around $35 total. Out of that I only used the blank for $16. A great tip when gluing a guitar top to avoid the slipping, which I got from the comment section from the Elden Ring guitar, is to screw the top into zones where eventually the pickups will be. That just saved me from tons of trouble, and I would like to also want to let you know by this that I read basically all your comments, and sometimes a great advice like this from someone experienced is exactly what I need to get better at each project I do. I would also like to thank you all for your feedback, which has been 99% positive and even funny sometimes. And if you are not subscribed yet and you like this type of content, consider subscribing. I wanted to have my knobs countersunk in this guitar, because I'll be installing a push-pull tone knob in the end, and I think it looks better when you can't see any gap between the knob and the body when you pull up the knob. Then I drilled holes for the single bridges, 3 holes for each, because the strings will go through the body. I needed to route a few shallow cavities on my control cavity plate, because the pickups I'm about to install are active and need to have a battery, and I will have mine battery rechargeable through a special component in the shape of this square with a hole in the middle. And I also needed to recess a small area for the switch, because this 5-way big boy is going in and it's just too tall. What you see me doing now is filing the fret tanks at the ends of each fret. That's how you get the frets with invisible tanks. Fretwork was overall longer this time because I used stainless steel frets. That's obviously much harder material than standard nickel fret wire. It's a bit dark to say, but stainless steel frets should essentially outlast the player. I used these sanding sponge Dremel bits to remove the tool marks, and then I painted all my cavities and the back of my control cavity plate with shielding paint. This reduces unwanted hum and noises from the outside sources. I didn't record the sanding process because I think it's both boring to do and boring to watch, and now you can see me applying true oil finish, which needs some practice to achieve pleasant results. I only applied 2 coats on the fretboard and 6 to the rest of the guitar. The top of the guitar literally drank the first few coats because I didn't use a sealer, and the Driftwood is essentially a burl, a combination of end grain and long grain. I always sanded the last cured coat with a fine steel wool, and then did the final coat with orbital sander and a buffing pad. In my opinion, that's the best way to achieve a great uniform finish with true oil with no visible strokes. After I installed the hipshot tuners, I tapped into ferrules, and don't you worry, the hammer is taped and soft to avoid any scratches. The customer wanted his guitar to be equipped with these Fishman Fluence Tosin Abassi signature series pickups, which combined with the rechargeable battery pack are expensive as hell, but I must say it's worth every dollar. I've never heard such noiseless and, let's say, humless pickups with such a clarity, and they offer a rich tonal variety as well. I am not very proud about my cable management, but the Tosin Abassi wiring diagram with the 5-way switch, push-pull tone and separated coil cables were just too much. I usually don't record my soldering because it makes me uncomfortable. So I tried my best to organize the cables a bit, install the battery and the charging component and called it done. What was left to do was to file the nut slot, shape the nut itself and polish it. For filing the slots I bought these Ibanez files, which are sized for my strings, and I obviously don't add them to the final total costs, but just for you to know, they cost around $100. In the end, I did the setup for standard tuning and I was done. The customer came with a cool name, so what do you think? wanted to purchase a guitar case for the guitar, and I also asked the local guitar center employee to give me some demo, and he was also so kind to have me record it. Thanks a lot, man.
To bylo úžasný. Škoda, že to přestalo.
To jsem se tam dodubal.
I also wanted to share with you the clean tone through sound cards and Guitar Rig 6 with some reverb and delay to show you a few tone variations with the 5-way switch and push-pull tone. You can get 8 main tones, but I'll show you a few favorites. There you go, the total costs for this build are $958, $1,052 if you count the case. Also know that I didn't count the consumables like sanding papers, glue, etc. That would add a few more dollars for sure. I'm ready to hear your opinion. What do you think is the final value of this guitar? What about the price? Just let me know in the comment section. If you have any questions, you can also DM me, and I have to wrap this thing now. So see you in the future. Thank you.